morning, students. Welcome back to Atmiya Green School. This is Afrin Syed, your English teacher. So, today we are going to learn a very interesting chapter from your book, New Pathways, and the chapter's name is Sir Lawley's Ghost Story. It is written by Asha and Himya. So, as the name says, ghost. Students, you might have already understood the title that this story is horror story. Do you like to hear the horror stories? I love to hear the horror stories. Horror stories consist of lots of mystery. There are lots of puzzles which are to be unsolved, and it has a lot of things to be discussed. So I'll share my experience that when we cousins used to get together, what we used to do, we used to prepare some Maggi, pasta, get some Coke for us, and sit inside the dark room. And after getting inside the dark room, we used to watch horror movies, we used to discuss horror stories, and then we tried to create an environment which is quite horrible. And after that, it was so difficult to sleep at night alone because we have discussed all those ghost stories, and I was very coward, I guess. During my childhood, I was afraid of darkness, I was afraid of many things around, and but still I love to hear those horrified stories. And after listening to those stories, I used to get frightened. So now, after growing up, I still don't watch those horror stories alone, but yes, sometimes even now, when we get together, we watch horror movies and we discuss horror stories. So here is a story about a boarding school which is named after his owner, Lawley. Lawley was a person who used to live in a very huge mansion, and in that huge mansion he was killed by his cousin. So it is believed that after his death
Asha Nehemiah.
sorry after his death he didn't got away. He is still moving around inside the boarding school, and he is horrifying, or he is trying to frighten those little boys around. So here the introduction of the story says, in your book it is said that Lawley's boarding school had two types of the residents. The one was boys and the others were ghosts, and this building was about 200-year old. Okay, and it was so much like 200 old building, has everything. It was sunlight blotting trees, the length of gloomy corridors, and it only by the cobweb filtered light that struggled into through the high ventilators offered endless opportunities for favorite pastime of gods, scaring humans. And what made even more fun for the ghost was the 750 boys in the boarding were available and willing to be frightened at any time, day or night. So there were around 750 boys living around in the boarding school, and they used to get frightened no matter whether it is day or night. Okay. Now it was the oldest. Now the building was very much old. Okay. Now what happened one day, new admission took place, and the new admission name was Arjun. That Arjun was a heroic type of person. He used to show the heroism in front of everyone. So what rest of the boys said, that this is a boarding where ghost lives. So he says that I don't believe in ghosts. I don't personally believe in the ghost. So there is a prefect whose name is so now our prefect Rohan has decided to trick the boy Arjun. He said that it is necessary to make him learn the lesson. So he what he did, he tied the pillow with the broom, which is used to clean the cobwebs on the ceiling. So now, uh, that fine day, he actually overslept because he was very much tired due to their marathon practice of the school. But he suddenly woke up at around 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. Now, when he woke up at 3 a.m. 4 a.m., it was still dark, and he thought that it is a good moment he can capture, and he can get the he can get the moment, and he can frighten to Arjun. So now Rohan got up, and suddenly he heard some voice. The voice was slow. In that calm and moist atmosphere, he looked around, and what he saw, to his surprise, there was a pillow with a blood stain, and there was nobody holding it. Just two hands were holding it, and he thought that whether these are his classmates. No, 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 no. It can't be the classmates, because the pillow which I have tied is still there under my bed. So it is not possible. So who was it? Was it his classmate, or was it Lawless, a real ghost? This is a mystery. Should I tell you now? Do you want to listen it now? No, 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 no. What we'll do is, we'll understand the chapter with a video, and along with going through the video, I'll make you understand things, and at the end of the video, we'll find the mystery solved, that who was that ghost. So shall we start? Yes, let's go.
The plan when it was worked out in detail by Asha Nehemiah. The plan when it was worked out in detail was something anyone could be proud about. Rohan had decided to use his own pillow and managed to get hold of a long-handled broom.
So, here is our prefect, Rohan, who had decided to use his own pillow and managed to get hold of long-handled broom. You can see
The kind used to clean cobwebs. Since the school had been built in the late 19th century, the extra high ceilings required brooms with impossibly long handles to clean them.
So the school was built during the times of the late 19th century. So during that time, the ceilings were used to build very high. So it was not possible to clean them with the hands. So they used the brooms to clean those ceilings.
In order to make the broom invisible in the dark, he smeared the bamboo handle with damp mud.
Now, as broom can be visible, so he decided that he'll smear the entire broom with the mud and make it dark, and handle with the damp mud. Okay, so what he did, he smeared the entire bamboo handle with the damp mud.
When no one was around, he practiced how the pillow, supposed to belong to the ghost, would appear to float in the dormitory by being attached to the broomstick.
So you can see, students, that he is practicing that how he's going to frighten those his friend Arjun, and how he is going to play the trick with him. So he was practicing to float. He was practicing to float that pillow which was attached to the broomstick to float into the dormitory.
To float in the dormitory by being attached to the broomstick. He was delighted when he saw how terrifying the effect was. The final touch was to instruct the other boys in the dorm its dramatic entry into the dormitory.
Like he had instructed all the boys also. Look, students, what he did, he practiced and he was very much delighted. He was very much happy with the results, and he was very much, because it was much more terrifying than he had thought. So he was very happy with the plan, and he discussed with other boys too, that how they have to behave. Now, how to behave on the night when the ghostly pillow made its dramatic entry into the dormitory.
When the ghostly pillow made its dramatic entry into the dormitory. On the night of the ghostly visit, it took the excited boys a long time to fall asleep.
Look, so what happened, that as it was like when there is something interesting going to happen in the morning or during the night time, we usually don't get to fall asleep. Okay, so here those boys were very much excited, and they took a really long time to fall asleep. But our boy Rohan was tired and fell asleep early.
But Rohan himself was so tired by that morning's grueling practice session for their school's annual cross-country marathon that he slept right through the faint digital beeping of his alarm clock. When he finally woke with a start, he realized that he had
So when he woke up with the alarm, he realized that he had already overslept.
He shone the torch at his alarm clock. It was already 3 in the morning.
So what he did, he showed the torch to his alarm clock, and he found out that it was 3 in the morning.
Shone the torch at his alarm clock. It was already 3 in the morning. But it was still dark, and daybreak in the Nilgiris was several hours away.
So, but as it was 3, it was still very dark and daybreak. Okay, and it was easier to make him still frightened.
He felt under his bed. Yes, the pillow he had prepared was right there.
So what happened? The pillow which he had prepared to frighten that Arjun was still right there. Okay, it was just beside, it was just under the bed, and he felt the pillow. He felt the pillow that yes, it was there, and he was relaxed. Now, while he was taking it out,
not too late for the ghost to make its appearance, he decided, and was about to tiptoe out of bed.
So he says that it is not too late. A ghost can appear now also, and he was just ready. While he tiptoed out of the bed,
when a familiar grating sound warned him that the dormitory door was being opened.
Oh, what happened? Now there was a kind of a very familiar grating sound, which warned him that a dormitory door was being opened. And
it was unlike their housemaster to pay such a late visit to the dorm.
now he thought that whether it is a housemaster who is paying a late visit to the dorm. No, it's not his time. He cannot appear for now.
Who did the soft footsteps belong to then?
So he's thinking that whose are these footsteps?
When he discovered the reason for the footsteps, icy prickles of fear crept down his spine.
So he was shivering. You can see in the picture, students, that he was actually shivering when he heard that footsteps.
For, advancing slowly into the dormitory, was a blood-stained pillow.
What happened? You can see, students, there is no figure, there is no body, and just 2 hands holding those blood-stained pillow.
Holding it was a hideous pair of ghostly white hands, made more terrifying by the fact that they weren't attached to any figure. Rohan's blood turned cold. He fumbled under his bed again.
Okay. He was very
Rohan's blood turned cold. He fumbled under his bed again, wondering whether any of the boys had decided to start the trick without him. No, The pillow he had prepared was still there.
First thought came in his mind that whether those boys had started tricking Arjun, but he thought no, pillow is still here, so how is it possible?
Which meant that he was he? No, it wasn't possible.
So now he thought that if pillow is lying here, then is he ghost? Question mark. Is he ghost? Do you know, students? Was it a ghost? I don't know. Let's see. Who was he?
But there it was. A pillow actually floating forward into the room, held by a bloodless pair of severed.
So, now he was very much frightened, and was it actually? So he was thinking
His
that
ears.
whether it was actually a ghost, and his heart was thudding. His heartbeats were getting faster and faster. His blood pounding in his ears, and like everything was so much frightening. Now what happens is,
Ghost! His throat was so dry with fear that his voice emerged only as a feeble whisper.
so he was so frightened that his voice was not even coming out. And he says, there is a ghost. He tried again. And this time a few sleepy heads stayed awake. So everyone who was sleepy over there was now awake.
There's a ghost! He tried again, and this time a few sleepy heads stirred awake. Seeing the bloody pillow, the boys simply assumed that Rohan's plan was working.
Now watching at that pillow, the boys assumed that Rohan's plan was now working.
Some of them even giggled before following the instructions they had been given earlier. They began screaming and shrieking, pretending to be afraid earlier.
So now a few of them were giggling as of course Rohan already gave them instruction that you don't have to act as if you know, but they were still giggling, and they were thinking that it was a plan which was going on, and Rohan was doing a really good acting, but it was not actually acting. He was doing for real. He was frightened for real.
They began screaming and shrieking, pretending to be afraid. There was so much confusion that no one noticed that Rohan himself was sitting stiffly in his bed.
So there was so much confusion, and that no one noticed that even Rohan was stick to his bed, and he was very much frightened.
Instead of being outside the dormitory, steering the pillow with the long broomstick.
Yes, of course. If he is going to execute the plan, then he should have been supposed to outside the dormitory, steering to the broomstick. So basically, Rohan was supposed to get outside the dormitory, and he was supposed to steer the pillow with the broomstick, but he was sitting on the bed himself. Okay, so he was not one who was shaking the pillow, but no one noticed because everyone was enjoying the atmosphere.
Pillow with the long broomstick. The screams continued for a long time, even after the pillow had retreated from the dormitory.
It was so terrifying that even after pillow had been retreated from the dormitory, everyone was screaming into the terror.
The boys were having such fun that it was some time before they remembered the target of the trick and turned their attention to Arjun.
Now, all the boys had a lot of fun as they were enjoying it, and suddenly they saw their attention moved towards Arjun, and they saw Arjun into a very much terrified manner, and he was very scared, and he seems to be terrified with the event which took place, and he was very much frightened.
Arjun. To their satisfaction, they saw that his eyes had turned saucer-shaped with horror.
And what was the satisfaction? That Arjun's eyes, you can see his eyes, they had turned into the saucer shape with the horror.
They saw that his eyes had turned saucer-shaped with horror. As for Rohan, the boys were filled with admiration at what they assumed was his superb acting.
So all the boys were thinking that Rohan did amazing, spectacular acting. So they were so much admiring, like, wow, Rohan did a great job. He was so real. He seems to be so real and natural with his acting skills, and they were very much surprised.
For even the hair in his eyebrows was standing on end in terror.
But the real story was Rohan was really frightened. Rohan was so much in the terror that his eyebrows have turned, the eyebrows on his hand, on his forehead, had actually turned like a bushy caterpillar,
making his bushy brows look like two hairy caterpillars on his forehead. And though he kept rubbing his arms, the goosebumps on them didn't subside till the next day.
Even though he was rubbing the goosebumps and he was trying to settle those goosebumps, but those goosebumps were not getting settled, and till very next day they were still there.
While the metal braces on his teeth had actually come loose because his teeth had been chattering all night.
So with the terror, and as he was very much scared that the braces on his teeth have got loosed.
How were they to know that their prefect wasn't acting and that his fright was totally genuine?
Now, of course, those boys didn't know that their prefect was not acting. It was genuine. He really saw something. But poor Rohan, he was haunted by the memory of dreadful vision he had seen. It was very dreadful.
Poor Rohan. He was haunted by the memory of the dreadful vision he had seen. How ghastly the bloodstains had been, and that spooky pair of hands! He shivered at the thought.
So even the thought of recalling it back was making him turn frightened. So enough to have turned his hair white. So he thought that might be his hair got turned white. So now he went and checked his hair.
Enough to have turned his hair white. He checked the mirror hastily, recalling the story he had made up for Arjun's benefit. His hair was still black, he noted with relief, though the fingers that knotted the special tie prefects wore trembled noticeably. The next few days were among the worst in Rohan's life. He was easily startled, and even the familiar sound of the junior boys stampeding down the wooden corridors, or the breakfast gong ringing, made him jump up in terror.
So whenever we are watching some horror movie or whenever we are listening some horror stories, even the shrill sound or even the lightest movement scares us. So just like that, whether it was a ring or whether it was the noise of the boys in the corridor were basically frightening our boy Rohan.
His heart wasn't in anything. He looked tired and forlorn as he went to fetch a fresh sports t-shirt from the kit room, where all the washed uniforms were stored in rows of neatly numbered cubbyholes.
Now this is cubby holes, okay? So where all the washed uniforms were stored neatly. And what he saw there.
This was the matron's domain, and she was busy scolding the school.
So she is matron domain, and what was she doing? She was scolding to school dhobi, and that school dhobi, school dhobi was just right beside her.
Dhobi for not washing the clothes properly.
So why was she scolding? She was scolding because she said that the dhobi was not washing the clothes properly.
This white shirt looks bluish grey. There are muddy streaks on these sheets.
So what she says, that this white shirt is just like a bluish gray, and the muddy streaks are still there on the sheets.
And this pillowcase has huge red stains on it.
And what she complained, that the pillowcase has a huge red stain on it.
The matron was complaining. What can I do, madam? The dhobi defended his washing.
Yes, what he said, that मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ madam? What can I do, madam? Okay, that pillow had a huge patches of red ink on it.
That pillowcase had huge patches of red ink on it. You know how difficult it is to wash off red ink.
So he says that it is very difficult to wash off red ink. So he says that I have managed to get most of the ink off, but still some of it is still there.
The ink off. Red ink on a pillowcase? Rohan froze.
And what? It was a surprise for Rohan. He heard that voice. Red ink on a pillowcase?
Red ink on a pillowcase? Rohan froze. Was this the pillowcase that had been bloodied with red ink to become the ghostly pillow?
So he remembered that ghostly pillow, and he said that whether it was the same pillow.
Every student at Lawley's was expected to mark his name on all items of clothing.
Yes, on each item of clothing, every Lawley student had their name.
So it wouldn't be difficult to trace the pillowcases.
So it was much easier to trace the pillowcase owner. So as it is said, that so it wouldn't be difficult to trace the pillowcase owner.
Matron seemed to have the same idea, for she snatched the pillowcase from the dhobi and examined it. Arjun Krishnaswamy? She exclaimed angrily.
Who was that boy? That boy, it was not a ghost. It was Arjun Krishnaswamy, the victim himself. The boy whom they were trying to scare had himself tricked all other boys. Okay.
Seeing the new boy's name marked on the pillowcase. This boy is getting worse and worse. Just the other day, there was a complaint that he had taken a pair of white gloves from the band room.
So those white gloves which seems to be there was he, and those white gloves were basically the kind of the drummers use. They stuffed it with the clay from the sculpture room.
The kind that the drummers use, and stuffed it with clay from the sculpture room. The clay had dried in the gloves to make them look like a pair of white hands.
Even that clay in the gloves have dried up, and it seems to look like a pair of white hands.
What's the matter, Rohan? She asked, suddenly noticing the prefect standing there.
So when he saw a prefect standing there with a pale face, he asked that what's the matter? And she said, it seems that you look like you have seen a ghost.
Absolutely still and pale-faced. You look like you've seen a ghost. The matron and the dhobi crossed themselves at the very mention of the word.
So when they say, or when the matron said about the ghost, they crossed themselves. Cross themselves is the action they.
The matron and the dhobi crossed themselves at the very mention of
the kind of action which Christians perform. So she crossed, that is matron, and dhobi both crossed.
Of the word. Seen a ghost, Rohan repeated numbly.
And he got the thought that it was no one else, it was not a ghost, it was Arjun himself.
While all sorts of angry thoughts went through his mind about what he'd like to do to that brat, that cheeky rascal, that pest, that pesky newcomer. Then he shook his head and grinned ruefully. Seen a ghost? Oh, no, ma'am. Now, I'm quite certain that I haven't.
So he answers that no, ma'am, I didn't saw any ghost. In fact, now I'm sure that it wasn't a ghost. That is, and after that he burst out with a laughter.
Seen a ghost, I mean. Now, that is. And he burst out laughing. His laughter was such a loud mixture of relief and hysteria that the matron and the dhobi looked at one another puzzled, and then crossed themselves again.
So our boy Rohan was so much relieved after knowing that it wasn't a ghost, and that Dhobi and Matron, who were not aware about the entire story, were so much puzzled at his thought. So students, indeed it was very horrified and mysterious story, but it got a lesson. It got a lesson to teach us that we don't have to do such things which affects anyone or which hurts someone's feeling, because more or less you never know that how is it going to come to you. Okay. You can trick anyone, you can you can have a bit fun, but you should not play with someone's emotion. Okay. Because it can turn out in a different way. And one more thing I want to say, students, that please, I have, of course, the video got you through the entire chapter and all the lines which are given in your book, but once you just read the entire chapter from the book and understand the story well. I hope you have understood the story. I hope you would have understood the characters Rohan and Arjun, and you would have understood easily that how the mystery was solved. Okay. So students, just go through the chapter once, just read the story once, and make it sure that you understood it well. Thank you so much, students. Have a good day. Take care of yourself as well as of your families.